Yeah.
This is Geek Therapy Radio.
What are we waiting for?
And now your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger.
Welcome to Geek Therapy Radio. What the hell was that? I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hamburger. Make sure you're following Geek Therapy Radio on all the social medias with a Z. At Geek Therapy Radio. On KPRC, technically it's at Geek Therapy KPRC. But if you just search in Twitter there, Geek Therapy Radio, it'll come up. If you want to subscribe to the podcast, you can subscribe to it all over the place. iHeartRadio app, that's what we prefer here at iHeartMedia, but also Spreaker, iTunes, Google Podcasts. On Android, I use Pocket Casts, and that is amazing. I've got a ton of podcasts that I subscribe to on Pocket Casts. This is not a commercial for Pocket Casts. If it was a commercial for any podcast app, it would have to be the iHeartRadio app, because that's what my lords, my supreme lords want me to advertise. So if you're gonna subscribe anywhere, we prefer it to be iHeartRadio app. But all I care about is that you actually listen and subscribe and share it with your friends. Let's move on to the topic du jour of this first segment. You know, I often have people ask me to give them more space. So this segment is going to be about some space and atmosphere stuff. That was a little bit of a joke at my expense, even though it's either A, not true, which I'm leaning towards, or B, I have complete lack of self-awareness to know that when people ask me to give them space, maybe it means they don't want me all up in their grill. That ain't me. Actually, depends who you are. If you're some of my best friends, I will make you very uncomfortable and downright question my sexuality. But that's neither here nor there. Let's move on to space and atmosphere stuff. Farmers in Mexico are complaining and accusing Volkswagen, the Volkswagen factory there in Mexico, of altering the weather in such a way that has caused droughts and ruined their crops. Volkswagen and many other car manufacturers at auto manufacturing plants use what's called hail cannons. It's these big, giant megaphone-looking things aimed towards the sky that sends out an explosion of air pressure that's meant to disrupt the cloud and disrupt the formation of hail. This story is silly to me. It kind of made me laugh that everybody's wrong here. Volkswagen, in this case, is wrong for thinking that something like hail cannons actually work. It has been proven for decades that hail cannons do not work. The vortex of air goes a few hundred feet out of the tip of the cannon, so to speak. Doesn't come anywhere near the cloud that's thousands of feet up. So the implementation of this hail cannon is useless. It has no effect on the clouds, has no effect on the weather, and the farmers, bless their hearts, it looks like kind of a money grab, I guess. You know what the real culprit of the droughts and their crops failing is? It's not hail cannons. It's not Volkswagen specifically. It's just climate change. It's changes in the weather, and in this particular region, I guess, is going through a period of drought. Soon enough, it'll be going through a period of more rainfall than they know what to do with. That's what happens. That's how the climate changes from decade to decade, from year to year. So while now their crops are being ruined by drought, it's not Volkswagen's fault. So, the farmers are wrong to be blaming Volkswagen for altering the weather, and Volkswagen, to a lesser extent, is wrong for trying to employ hail cannons as a way of protecting their inventory from hail damage. Now, in response, in good faith, Volkswagen has limited their use of these hail cannons. And they've just implemented what other car makers do and other car lots and things like that. They just have tarps. They have big nets that hang over the big parking lots to protect their inventory from receiving hail damage. This segment's actually looking a little short, so I'm gonna move on to more space stuff. That wraps it up for Farmers v Volkswagen. Aurora Borealis and Aurora Australis? I always forget that second one. Well, there's another light phenomenon happening in the skies, and it's been going on for decades. Photographers have known about it for decades, but astronomers, scientists are just now kind of picking up on it and speculating what it is. It's called Steve. And scientists don't know what's causing it. It's a streak. It's a streak of purple light going through the sky near the aurora that has white hues to it. And Steve, what does Steve stand for? Steve stands for Strong Thermal Emission Velocity Enhancement. And scientists still do not know what causes it, but it kind of looks like aurora. It's really, really cool looking. So that's some space news. We've also, real quick, found strong evidence of water on the moon. And scientists are saying, yep, it's for sure there now. We know that. But the question is now, how can we use the water available on the moon near the poles in future missions to aid us in our quest to get interplanetary? I don't know. We'll be right back with more Geek Therapy Radio. Plenty more coming up. I'm Johnny Hemberger, your mental curator. Stick around. It's going to be fun. Who among us doesn't love great beer, amazing food, and arcade games? That's why I'm stoked beyond geek belief to tell you about Kung Fu Saloon, located at 5317 Washington Avenue, right here in Houston. Kung Fu Saloon on Washington Avenue has the geek trinity covered, and then some. Of course, they have the most excellent beer on tap, the nomiest food off the grill, and the vintage arcade games we love. But you can also get your Tay-Tay on with karaoke, your super fan on with televised sports, and your rug cut to the best music and DJs on Washington Avenue. In addition to arcade games, get your competitive fix with Giant Jenga, Giant Connect 4, 3 skee-ball lanes, shuffleboard, and foosball. Get your drink, food, game, karaoke, and dance on. Or step to Street Fighter 2 with me and get your geek fanny served. Hadouken! Kung Fu Saloon, 5317 Washington Avenue. Visit www.kungfusaloonhouston.com for more details and dress code info. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. Mental curator Johnny Hemberger at Geek Therapy Radio, all over social media. Another quick thing before we move on to the subject matter of this segment, which is, does waking up early actually help you? And or what are the struggles of actually waking up early? Let me just, real quick, okie dokie. But yeah, we'll get into that subject. Should you basically be waking up at 4 a.m, let's say? But to expand upon, or to add to the previous segment, I came across another mind-blowing space thing that I meant to throw in here. And that is, it's going to warp your mind, and it's going to bend your mind, as it has bent mine, to think about the scale of the universe. It's very hard to conceptualize the scale of the universe because the human brain just wasn't built to do that. I use the word built loosely. Don't get your panties in a twist or light up the comments section if you're watching this on YouTube that I use the word built. I'm not necessarily implying a creator or creationism or anything like that. So I'll use a better thing. You can believe whatever you want to believe, and I can believe whatever I want to believe personally. But our brains were not designed, were not evolved so far to conceptualize the scale of the universe. It's very hard for us to conceptualize how far light travels, for instance, in 1 year. We can conceptualize a kilometer pretty easily. We can conceptualize a mile pretty easily, 10 miles, 100 miles, 200, 300. We can conceptualize 1,500 miles. I can conceptualize 3,000 miles. I can even conceptualize 10,000 miles or so. But I would say for me, that's probably pretty much the limit. And I'm not even talking about conceptualizing the infinitesimally small, the macro universe, which is just as infinite as the external universe. That's trippy? This segment already is right out the gate pretty trippy. But I wanted to put some sort of scale, some sort of context, brackets around the scale of the history of time. The universe is about 14 billion years old, we've surmised, in our human time structure. Seconds, minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years, decades, centuries, millennia, whatever, eons. Try to put some brackets around this, and I'm going to use, and for this example, I'm going to use a human lifetime, a human lifespan. So let's say, on average, give or take, 70 to 100 years or so. 75 years, which 75 to me sounds like the low end of a lifespan, and that might just be that just might be me and my genes. My great grandmother was 101 years old. She died in the year 2000. She was born in 1899. That's crazy. This is the mind warping segment. I could ask my great-grandmother, because she was sharp all the way to the end. I could ask her about the Titanic. I could ask her about World War I. She was already in her mid-40s for World War II. Wrap your mind around that for a minute. So she was around for everything. She remembers getting electricity to her farm. She still used the outhouse. So anyways, my perception of what an average lifespan is kind of skewed. 75 seems low to me. My grandmother right now is still alive, and she's 96 years old. I'm probably going to live to be 150. That's just my genes, though. So anyways, average lifetime. If you, in the scale of 14 billion years, if you were to put a big ruler on the ground, and you made the human lifetime the width of a piece of paper, just an average piece of paper that you rip out of a notebook, that thickness, if that represents a human lifespan, the beginning of the universe is 8 miles away as the crow flies. So let's shrink it down a little bit more than that. Let's try to conceptualize it maybe perhaps a little bit better than that. Let's make the average lifespan the width of a human hair, the average human hair. At that point, the scale of the universe, the time scale of the universe, the beginning is 4 miles away. What is that, about 10 kilometers or so? 4 miles away. If your lifetime amounts to the thickness of a human hair, the beginning of the universe is 4 miles away. Isn't that nuts? Isn't that crazy to think about? Wow. All right, let's move on to the benefits, if any, to waking up, let's say, at 4 a.m. And it's just kind of a mental exercise. I used to do this all the time. I work in radio, so my times are all over the place. If you give me a wake up time for 2:30 in the morning, that's fine. I'll go to sleep 6 p.m., no problem. That is one thing working your way up through radio teaches you, is how to just sleep whenever you have a few hours available to sleep. It completely and how to sleep during the day. I did for years. My 9 to 5 quote unquote shift was actually 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. So I could sleep during the day, no problem. I used to go to bed around 7 a.m. when I finally would go to sleep. Wake up mid-afternoon sometime, go to work. You learn how to sleep during the day. You draw the curtains and you learn how to do that. So I think for people like me, and I know there's a lot of people listening right now who probably have their bodies trained to such a ridiculous schedule, the idea of training yourself to wake up at 4 a.m. doesn't seem that... Now listen to me, doesn't seem that horrible. For most of us, it probably does seem quite horrible, I'm sure. But let's think about what you can do if you woke up at 4 a.m. What do you wake up now? Around 7 a.m. right now? Probably the average person probably wakes up around 7 a.m. for work. You have 3 extra hours. Here's something that I noticed when I was going home from work at 4 a.m. That time at 4 a.m., you feel like you are the only human on Earth. It's quite interesting, and at times it can feel scary, but most of the time it feels like the world is your oyster. So, if you wake up at 4 a.m., you're waking up before the birds start chirping, you're waking up an hour, 2 hours, a couple hours before sunrise, depending on the time of the year and your location. But you have the world to yourself. And if you're an introvert, I think of myself as a little bit of an introvert. I have no problem being around people at all. I enjoy being around people somewhat, but I also really enjoy my alone time. If you're an introvert, waking up at that time can probably get a lot accomplished. You probably do your best work when you're alone if you're an introvert. And let's be real, this is Geek Therapy Radio. A lot of us probably are introverts. And that's all I kind of wanted to go at from that early rising issue is if you like to be alone and if you want to feel like the world is your oyster, maybe it might be looking into rising at 4 a.m. If you like to work out, maybe rise at 4 a.m. when there's nobody else at the gym or there's very few people at the gym. Very interesting to think about. If you could just adjust your schedule to rise at 4 a.m. Now, that would mean for most of us, you get home from work and immediately go to bed. To get 8 hours of sleep, if you were to wake up at 4 a.m., that would mean that you have to go to bed at 8 p.m. So how's that all going to work out? If you get a few hours, home from work and then you go to bed. Is that so bad? What do you think about waking up at 4 a.m.? Let me know in the comments below if you're watching this on YouTube. Or if you're listening to this on any medium that allows comments, or go to Facebook, even better, Geek Therapy Radio on Facebook, or Twitter, and let me know what you think. Could you wake up at 4 a.m.? Maybe you already do. How is that for you? More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. I'm Johnny Hamburger. We'll be right back with more GTR. Welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. Johnny Hamburger, your mental curator as always. I am stoked because in the studio today I have somebody you may know from 94.5 The Buzz and any concert you might have ever gone to around the city.
What's up, Johnny? How you doing, buddy?
How you doing, Jeremy?
Doing great, man. It's an awesome day. We've got this news popping up about these graphics cards. I've been talking to you about this for days.
Yes, probably even longer than that. Jeremy pops in the studio every once in a while, every couple days or so. He's like, have you heard the new specs on the RTX? And all this gossip and jib-jab about the RTX. The RTX has been officially announced, and what we're waiting for now, Nvidia's done their keynote. What we're waiting for now is information beyond ray tracing. All they've said is that the RTX is going to be up to, quote unquote, 6 times faster than the outgoing 1000 series. So like a 1080 Ti versus a 2080 Ti, up to 6 times performance. What does that mean? I understand like raw horsepower, but we've been speculating. That's great about ray tracing. It makes things look beautiful, but we are still waiting for benchmarks. And as it happens, and again, I'll explain why, but take this with a little grain of salt. Nvidia has released some benchmarks, and I think that's just to satiate, just to give us a little something while we're waiting for third-party reviewers to give us the benchmarks?
Well, what you were saying earlier, which I think everybody's dodging, is Nvidia saying that these graphics cards are 6 times faster than the previous 10 series, but the problem is the 10 series, they weren't ever designed for ray tracing.
Right.
So what that means is you're going to say that, of course, it's going to be 6 times faster. It could be 100 times faster because
Right.
there are chips in these new cards that are meant to handle ray tracing. They're
Right.
not in the 10 series, so I don't
Right.
think it's not comparing apples to apples.
It's not really comparing apples to apples, and I think what most gamers care about, and I kind of put it in terms in a previous podcast, I said, what we want to know about is a game running at 4K ultra settings that's getting 10 frames per second. You're promising up to 6 times the performance. Is that game that's running at 10 frames per second in 4K now running at a buttery smooth 60 frames per second?
Get to that 60.
I have severe doubts that that is going to be the case. Not only just because games are different, each one's different, and each one is optimized differently, but Nvidia has released some specs, some benchmarks, and again, with a grain of salt, I'm going to go over them real quick. What's that first one? Okay. Final Fantasy, 60 frames per second.
At 4K.
At 4K, right, exactly. Here's the grain of salt. They say at 4K, but we don't know the settings.
Like
for this.
high settings, high graphical
low
settings, right.
Exactly. Hitman, 73 frames per second. Call of Duty World War II, 93 frames per second. Again, this is 4K HDR. 4K HDR. The new Mass Effect, 67 frames per second. Battlefront 2, is that what? Yes, Star Wars Battlefront 2, 65 frames per second. The new Resident Evil, 66 frames per second. F1 2017, 72 frames per second. I'm sorry. I got to keep leaning forward. Destiny 2, 66 frames per second. The video game makers don't put like the name of the game sometime like really prominent on the box art. So I'm like leaning in. It's like it's part of the art. Battlefield 1, 84 frames per second. And I think that's kind of the most key benchmark here. Also Far Cry 5 at 71 frames per second. But a lot of people play Far Cry 5. A lot of people play Battlefield 1. And so, according to Nvidia, and this is the RTX 2080. I should have said that. It's not the Ti. This is RTX 2080. Battlefield 1, 84 frames per second, 4K HDR. Far Cry 5, 71 frames per second, 4K HDR. Again, grain of salt. We don't know what the actual settings are for these games, and we also don't know if those are, we can assume, I'm going to assume those aren't the minimum frames per second.
Oh, well, yeah, nobody wants to see something look that ugly at 4K. You want to turn those graphics up and make it look pretty, then you can brag about it.
So what I'm saying is I doubt that, okay, Far Cry 5, 71 frames per second, I doubt that's like, you know how the frame rates rise and dip. I doubt that 71 frames per second is the minimal.
Oh, right.
So the question is this 71 frames per second the average? Or
some kind of peak.
Exactly. I wouldn't be it wouldn't be beyond
Nvidia to use those numbers to their benefit.
Right, to keep the hype train going. So that's to be seen. Those are the benchmarks in those games. And I don't know. You know what? There's arguments either way about pre-ordering. A lot of people pre-order these cards. Some people say, yeah, well, you can pretty much be assured that it's going to be faster than in this case, we're looking at the RTX 2080 benchmarks. Yeah, you can be assured that it's going to be faster than the 1080. Well, how much faster? Because if it's 10% faster, that's probably not...
And now they've got the numbers. I don't know if you've seen the recent numbers yet on these new graphics cards. So the stats that they say, usually every jump is somewhere between, as a guess, 20 to 40% as they go from generation to generation. 20 to 40% better.
Right.
And now the new stats on this one is it's supposed to be either 1.5 times faster than the last generation.
150%.
Or 200%, meaning double the speed and power.
Yeah.
And we're talking on just normal games, not even all 4K. We're also talking about stuff where you could have a normal game, The Witcher 3 or something it's not super hard on your graphics card, especially if you have a more modern one. But I mean, you're going to be getting double the frames per second on these new graphics cards. That's going to be well into the numbers that are going to make these games look great.
That's the promise. That's the hype. again, it's August 24th as of recording this. My birthday's tomorrow, by the way.
Birthday.
You think I'm going to do a best of on my birthday? Heck no. There's too much going on here. I don't believe in best ofs. Anyways, so that would be, that would be awesome on my birthday, tomorrow the 25th, although I doubt they would release such information on a Saturday. I'm guessing next week, by middle of next week, we'll have people like Linus Tech Tips or Tom's Hardware or Jay's 2 Cents or Austin Evans, any of those people actually doing the third-party benchmarks on the 2080s. I guarantee you that they already have the cards.
They've already admitted it. They've got them. They just can't release it until Nvidia gives them the go.
Exactly. So that's what we're waiting for. And back to the pre-order thing, the argument is businesses should earn your money. Nvidia hasn't earned our money yet with the 2080, with the 2000 series, 2070, 2080, 2060s when they come out, 2050s. They haven't earned the money yet because we haven't seen the third-party results yet. And is it going to be, let's say, there are going to be people who automatically buy, a new $1,200 whatever graphics card because they simply must have the bleeding edge. They must have the latest and greatest. I'm still rocking a 980 in my setup.
I've got that 970 in mine too.
Yeah, and I
hanging in there.
And I do the bulk of my gaming at 1080.
Me too.
1080p.
Same here.
On the TV, and that's the 980 and you said 1070 you have, or
I have the 970. Yeah.
1080 gaming, it's still like
you're hanging right there in the 60s at pretty high settings, so it does all right. It has no problem with that.
Yes, I can do some 4K stuff.
Really?
Over 60. Like if I can put on Rocket League, let's say, and put it like super low settings to do 4K, which is kind of, that's another argument for esports. You don't really need all the highest visuals for esports. You need the frame rate. So that's, if you're into esports, are you going to get the new 2080 or the new 2000 series?
Of course you are. Why not?
Yeah, if you've got the money, yes, but don't pre-order it. We're running out of time here in this segment. Are you going to get the new?
Yeah, I skip every other generation. This one's on my radar, and I know that even though it's going to cost a pretty penny, this boost will last me for the next 2 years.
Yeah.
So
I think I am too. And I'm also curious as to more benefit from video encoding.
Oh, it's going to be awesome. It's got
editing,
AI stuff that's supposed to help with even faster frames per second. This new card's going to have some pretty nice benefits. Yeah.
It's going to be an improvement for rendering for sure. So I think I'm going to pick one up. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. Jeremy, once again, thank you for coming
awesome day, man. Thanks for having me.
Let's do it again.
Yeah, I'm in.
All right, man. Once again, my thanks to Jeremy for joining me for that discussion on the RTX 2000 series cards. I guess we left it with the question. We went over, and again, it's only August 24th now as of recording this Geek Therapy Radio, this episode of Geek Therapy Radio. So by the time you're watching it, undoubtedly, more details have come out and more third-party benchmarks have come out. But the big question is, do you pre-order? Should you pre-order? It's to be said, companies should earn our money. The last time I pre-ordered anything was Street Fighter V. And as the old saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Shame on us. Are you going to pre-order the 20 series? I say if you're flush with cash and you don't care, you're going to do it anyways, why not? It is going to be better, but the question is how much better? If you're strapped for cash, if you don't exactly have $1,200 or whatever just to throw around, perhaps we should wait on the benchmarks. I'm going to wait on the benchmarks. I probably am going to get a 2000 series card, but let's wait on the benchmarks. And by the time this video comes out, maybe the benchmarks are available. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. I'm going to talk about when celebrities become relatable, when high-profile people become relatable to the common man. Specifically Elon Musk. So stick around. More Geek Therapy Radio coming up. So this is take 2. I already recorded this whole segment, but then I didn't like where it was going, so I'm just redoing it. If it was live, it'd be fine, but, I just was running out of time. Anyways, sometimes we forget that celebrities and high-profile people are human. And in kind of a roundabout way, oh, by the way, welcome back to Geek Therapy Radio. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger, at Geek Therapy Radio for all the social media. back to my point, one of the roundabout ways that, like a benefit to social media, the rise of social media, I think, is that they say, celebrities and high-profile people have become all the more accessible, which is true. I would take it a step further, and I would say that sometimes social media can give us a refreshing glimpse that these high-profile people are human beings just like the rest of us. And I'm going to use Elon Musk here for an example. This is Geek Therapy Radio. He's like the king of the geeks. While, yes, these people are human beings, I would say that a lot of us have a hard time sympathizing with a lot of these celebrities. In Elon Musk's case, a lot of us might have a hard time sympathizing with him because he's a billionaire. And most of us would trade our problems for his if we could be billionaires. I don't think that's too far-fetched of a statement. But back to the point, using Musk as an example, he's a human too. And he struggles just the way humans do. Not saying he's not human. I'm saying he struggles just like the rest of us do. And I forget who said it. It was about the blues, like the music, blues, the blues. It doesn't matter if you're black, it doesn't matter if you're white, or rich or poor. The blues are the blues, and pain is pain, no matter where you come from. So taking with a grain of salt the sympathy for a billionaire, Elon Musk says that this is, quote, that this is the most, quote, painful year of my career, unquote. And that's not so far-fetched, the Model 3 is having production line troubles. We still have yet to see the $35,000 Model 3. That's weighing on him a lot. But I think also equally, if not more so, and hopefully, it's wishful thinking to think I'll ever get Elon Musk on my show, but one of the things I think he might struggle with, as a lot of us do, is how to handle criticism. Donald Trump is a similar way, and I'm sure other celebrities are too, but it seems like highly successful people, and I'm not comparing Elon Musk to Donald Trump personally or politically, anything like that, but both seem to have a struggle with how to handle criticism, as most of us do. So part of this most painful year of his career thing is, how he barked at the cave rescue guy and called him a quote unquote pedo guy. That was a backlash. That was him being a little hot-headed and making a baseless claim about somebody, maybe forgetting for a second that he was a billionaire and a science maverick. And he took it personally and he reacted. That's very human. That's what we all do. Some more so than others, some to a greater extent than others. But it's fascinating to see that these people, these celebrities, these high-profile people are human beings. And I sympathize with that a bit. The other thing that Elon is dealing with this year, painfully, is his tweet the other day, a few weeks ago, where he said he was going to take Tesla private and it was going to be $420 a share. He got all sorts of even legal backlash. That borders on not necessarily insider trading, but that tweet may have artificially inflated the stock price of Tesla, and it did. It did inflate the stock price. But that's the legal ramifications. Oh, he came under fire for that. He said that, and the stock price went up. It's funny how making a tweet can influence stock price. So he's dealing with that legal battle right now. I'm not exactly sure what's coming of that, but it's got to be a stress on him. Not to mention the fact that some people mentioned. Speculated as to whether or not Elon Musk was high on weed at the time that he made that, simply because he said $420 a stock, $420. Elon Musk has reiterated that he was not stoned. Not only was he not stoned, but he said that weed is actually not very good for productivity. And I would tend to agree with that. A little side note. I have worked with, growing up, a lot of us wanted to be musicians. And my route to getting better at the guitar and being a better musician, and I'm not saying that I'm the greatest in the world at all. No. But some of my counterparts got in their head that the best way to become a talented musician was to smoke weed and then play guitar. That somehow smoking weed was going to make them a good guitar player. And that's not the case. Those people have not made it, have not progressed in their instrument, have not progressed in their pursuit, let's just say. They see the rock stars getting stoned and musicians getting stoned, and they think that's what you got to do. You just gotta smoke every day. Smoke every day, and then the talent will come. Nope. You practice and you focus and you practice and focus and practice and focus. That's how you get better at a craft. That's how you get better at an instrument. So, anyways, back to Elon Musk. He says that weed is not very good for productivity. That has nothing to do with why. I mean, the weed side note has nothing to do with why he's feeling really stressed out. And I guess really that's all I had to say about that. Is it's one of the things that social media is providing us is this glimpse into celebrities and high-profile individuals' psyches, and that they are fragile, just like us, if not more so. And my hope, and what I'm trying to get at with all this is I hope that not to make these high-profile individuals or celebrities the sacrificial lamb, but maybe when we're so quick to criticize and so quick to point out and insult celebrities or rich people or high-profile people, that maybe some of us listening to this, maybe some of us will take that as a cue to turn the mirror on ourselves. To see things, for instance, if we're geeks, see things in Elon Musk that we don't like about ourselves necessarily, or that we like to improve upon ourselves. Maybe that's a little silver lining to all of this, is that looking at these people's struggles in such high profile will make us examine our struggles and even make us sympathize with all human beings, rich or poor, no matter where they come from. Sympathize with all human beings. That's all I got to say for this segment. Stick around for... No, that's it, actually. This is it. This is the end of Geek Therapy Radio. Thank you for listening. GeekTherapyRadio.com is a good portal to all things Geek Therapy Radio. Be good to each other, starting with yourselves. The best way to be good to others is to be good to ourselves. Subscribe to the podcast. You'll look through the whole back catalog, find a subject you see I'm talking about, and listen to that show. There's a whole back catalog now. It's great. Until next week, take care, everybody. I will see you then.